Before you can defeat negative thinking, you must first learn to see it. Most people live their entire lives reacting to their thoughts without realizing they're doing it. A single idea crosses their mind, and before they even question it, it becomes their truth. They feel sad, anxious, unworthy, and they assume that's reality. But what if I told you that your thoughts are not facts? They're only stories the mind keeps telling over and over until you start believing them. Awareness begins in silence. It's that moment when you stop running from one distraction to another and you finally hear the voice inside your head. For most people, that voice is harsh, critical, always judging. It tells you you're not good enough, not progressing fast enough, not loved enough. But that voice is not you. It's only the echo of old experiences, fears, and comparisons you've collected along the way. The problem is, you've spent so much time listening to it that you've forgotten who's listening. The mind is like a river. Thoughts flow constantly, some peaceful, some violent, but the river itself is not the problem. The problem is when you fall in and get swept away. Awareness means stepping back onto the riverbank and simply watching. You begin to see patterns, how your mind always goes to the worst case scenario, how it replays old mistakes, how it searches for what's missing instead of what's present. In that moment of observation, something powerful happens. You are no longer inside the thought. You're watching it from the outside. That's where freedom begins. It takes courage to sit with your mind because awareness is uncomfortable at first. When you slow down and listen, you start to notice how chaotic your inner world really is. You see how quickly one negative thought can create a chain reaction. I made a mistake turns into I'm a failure, which turns into I'll never succeed. The spiral begins so fast that you barely realize you've been pulled under. Awareness interrupts this pattern. It places a small gap between the thought and your reaction. And in that gap, you find clarity. The purpose of awareness isn't to fight or suppress the negative thoughts. The moment you start fighting, you give them energy. The mind loves conflict. It feeds on it. So instead of trying to silence the voice, just watch it. Treat it as if it were a passing cloud in the sky. You don't chase it. You don't argue with it. You simply let it drift by. The more you practice this, the weaker the thought becomes. You realize it was never a storm. It was just weather. Awareness also means recognizing how easily you identify with your mind. You say, I am angry, but in truth, anger is only passing through you. You say, I am anxious, but anxiety is only visiting. It doesn't live here. The moment you shift from I am to I am noticing, the entire relationship changes. You become the sky, not the storm. You are the space in which thoughts appear, not the thoughts themselves. And once you understand that, you stop being their victim. In your daily life, awareness is tested constantly. When someone criticizes you, can you notice the immediate reaction before you defend yourself? When you fail at something, can you see the voice that says, I'm not good enough? And choose not to believe it. When fear arises, can you feel it without running away from it? These are small but powerful moments of awakening. Each time you observe instead of react, the mind loses a little of its grip on you. The greatest misunderstanding is thinking that awareness means control. It doesn't. You can't control the waves of the mind any more than you can control the weather. But you can learn to navigate them. You can learn to surf instead of drown. Awareness gives you that balance, the ability to stay centered while everything else moves. It's not about removing thoughts. It's about changing your relationship with them. When you observe without judgment, you create distance. And in that distance, peace begins to grow. The truth is, the mind never stops talking. It will always comment, predict, compare, and criticize. But awareness makes you realize something extraordinary. You don't have to believe everything it says. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it deserves your attention. You can choose which ones to follow and which ones to let go. That choice is the first step toward mental clarity. You don't defeat negative thinking by fighting it. You defeat it by understanding it. The light of awareness is enough to dissolve the darkness of confusion. Because when you see clearly, the illusion disappears on its own. And the moment you wake up to that, you stop being a prisoner of your mind and start becoming the master of it. Everything begins with awareness. Once you've learned to see the patterns of your mind, the next step is to stop resisting them. This is where most people struggle. They become aware of their negative thoughts, their fears, their pain, and then they immediately try to push them away. They say, I don't want to feel this. I need to get rid of this. Why is this happening to me? But resistance is the subtle way the mind stays in control. The more you fight what is, the more power you give it. Acceptance doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you're okay with suffering. It means you stop adding more suffering on top of what's already there. When you resist your emotions, you build tension around them. You turn pain into chaos. But when you accept, the energy starts to move. It's like unclenching a fist that's been tight for years. The moment you relax, the energy begins to flow again. What was once heavy becomes lighter, not because the problem disappeared, but because you stopped fighting it. Think about how much of your mental struggle comes from wanting reality to be different. You wish people behave differently. You wish your past didn't happen the way it did. You wish things had gone according to your plan. And yet, none of that changes the truth of this moment. Acceptance is the art of letting reality be as it is, without conditions. When you stop arguing with life, you free up all the energy that was being wasted on control. That energy can finally be used to grow, to understand, to heal. You see, the mind loves control. It wants to define, fix, and categorize everything. It believes peace will come once everything is perfect. But peace never comes from control. It comes from connection. Acceptance reconnects you to what's happening right now. It teaches you to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. It shows you that emotions are not enemies to be defeated, but visitors to be understood. Every emotion carries information. Fear might be asking you to prepare. Sadness might be asking you to slow down. Anger might be asking you to set a boundary. When you accept these messages instead of rejecting them, you turn pain into guidance. Most people say they want clarity, but they refuse to face what clouds their mind. They want to move forward, but they haven't accepted where they are. You can't build a clear mind on the foundation of denial. If you pretend to be okay when you're not, you build layers of self-deception. Acceptance removes those layers. It's an act of honesty. It says, this is how I feel. This is where I am. And that's okay. From that place, real transformation begins. There's a story about a monk who was meditating by a river. A man approached him, angry and shouting, blaming the monk for things he hadn't done. The monk simply looked at him, calm and silent. When the man finally stopped yelling, the monk said, if someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does it belong? The man said, it still belongs to the one who offered it. The monk smiled and said, then I refuse to accept your anger. That's acceptance in motion, not reacting, not resisting, simply allowing what is without letting it disturb your inner peace. Acceptance doesn't mean you stop taking action. It means you act from clarity instead of confusion. When you accept reality, you stop wasting time wishing things were different, and you start using your energy to make them better. Acceptance turns you into a conscious participant in your life, not a victim of circumstances. You begin to see that life is not against you. It's teaching you, shaping you, refining you. Every challenge is a mirror showing you where you're still attached, still resisting, still holding on. Sometimes acceptance means sitting quietly with pain until it loses its edge. Other times it means letting go of the idea that things should have been different. Either way, it's a process of surrendering, not to defeat, but to wisdom. When you stop fighting, you can finally listen. When you stop running, you can finally see. The moment you allow yourself to be fully present with what's uncomfortable, it begins to transform on its own. What you accept, you transcend. There's a deep stillness that comes when you stop arguing with life. It's the silence after the storm, not because the storm has ended, but because you found peace within it. Acceptance doesn't fix the world outside. It harmonizes the world inside. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in to the truth of the moment. And from that truth, the mind becomes clear enough to see the next step forward. When you stop resisting, you stop suffering. When you begin to see your thoughts clearly and stop resisting them, something beautiful starts to happen. You realize that the way you experience life isn't determined by what happens to you, but by how you interpret what happens. Every situation, every challenge, every moment of pain, none of it has meaning until you give it one. That's the power of perspective. And that is where transformation begins. Most people think their suffering comes from circumstances, but it actually comes from interpretation. Two people can face the same situation. One breaks down, the other grows stronger. The event was the same, but the meaning they gave it was different. This is the secret of the mind. It cannot tell the difference between what's happening and what it believes is happening. If your belief is that life is against you, you'll find proof of that everywhere. But if your belief is that life is teaching you, you'll also find proof of that everywhere. What you look for, you will find. Reframing isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's not about forcing positivity or denying pain. It's about seeing the deeper lesson hidden inside the discomfort. Pain is a teacher disguised as chaos. It arrives uninvited, but it always carries a message. When you start to ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of, why is this happening to me? The entire emotional landscape shifts. You move from being a victim of life to being a student of it. And students learn, victims repeat. Think about a difficult time in your life, something that once felt unbearable. Maybe it was loss, failure, betrayal. In that moment, it seemed impossible to see anything good in it. But now, when you look back, you can probably see how it changed you. Maybe it made you stronger, wiser, more compassionate. That's reframing. You didn't change the past, you changed the meaning you gave to it. And by changing the meaning, you changed how it lives within you. The human mind is a storyteller. It builds entire realities from thoughts, emotions, and memories. The stories you tell yourself shape your future. If your story is, I always fail, then every challenge will confirm that belief. But if your story becomes, I am learning to rise, then even failure becomes part of your growth. Reframing means taking control of your story. You stop letting your mind write from fear, and you start writing from awareness. The same pen that once wrote your pain can write your peace. Every time something painful happens, the mind immediately labels it as bad. But how many times has something you thought was bad actually turned out to be a blessing? Sometimes, rejection is protection. Sometimes, endings are beginnings. Sometimes what falls apart is simply making space for something more aligned to come together. Reframing doesn't change what happened. It changes what you take from it. And what you take from it determines who you become next. There's a story about a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbor said, "Such bad luck?" The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbor said, "Such good luck?" The farmer replied, "Maybe." Then the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. Again the neighbor said, "Such bad luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." A week later, soldiers came to recruit young men for war. But because his son's leg was broken, he wasn't taken. The story never ends. It only changes depending on where you stop calling things good or bad. Reframing is the wisdom of that farmer, the understanding that life is always unfolding beyond your judgment. The more you practice reframing, the more peace you find in uncertainty. You stop needing everything to make sense right now. You start trusting that one day it will. You begin to see life as a process, not a punishment. Every difficulty becomes a mirror showing you your strength, patience, and resilience. Instead of asking life to be easier, you start asking yourself to be wiser. This shift doesn't happen overnight. The old patterns of thinking will try to pull you back into blame, self-pity, and fear. But each time you consciously reframe, you weaken their hold. You teach your mind that perspective is your power. And the more you use that power, the more clarity you gain. Because mental clarity isn't the absence of struggle, it's the ability to see through it without losing your center. So the next time pain appears, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Look deeper. Ask what it's trying to show you. Life speaks in the language of contrast, light and shadow, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. You need both to understand yourself fully. When you learn to reframe, you stop running from the dark and start using it to find the light. Pain will visit you many times in life. But suffering only stays when you refuse to change your perspective. Once you've learned to see your thoughts clearly, to stop resisting them, and to give them new meaning, the final step is to build the discipline to sustain that clarity every day. Because clarity is not a one-time event, it's a lifelong practice. The mind doesn't transform through inspiration alone, it transforms through repetition. The same way the body grows stronger through consistent training, the mind becomes still through consistent awareness. Discipline is the bridge between understanding and embodiment. Many people wait for motivation to arrive before they act. They want to feel peaceful before they meditate or feel calm before they breathe. But peace does not come before practice. It is the result of it. If you only train your mind when you feel like it, your emotions will always lead the way. Discipline means showing up even when your mind resists, even when your mood disagrees. It means doing what is right for your growth, not what feels easy in the moment. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you reclaim power from the mind. The purpose of discipline isn't to control yourself through force, it's to create structure that nurtures peace. Small daily actions, 10 minutes of silence, a few pages of reflection, mindful breathing between tasks, these are not just habits, they are anchors. They hold you steady when life becomes uncertain. The person who waits for calm to appear will always be a slave to chaos. The person who practices calm daily carries stillness into every situation. Think of your mind like a garden. If you don't tend to it, weeds of worry and fear will grow on their own. Discipline is the act of tending, removing what doesn't serve you, planting what does. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. Each time you return to awareness, you're cultivating that inner garden. You may not see immediate results, but over time, the soil of your mind becomes fertile ground for peace, clarity, and strength. Most people misunderstand discipline as restriction, but true discipline is freedom. When your mind is untrained, you are pulled in every direction by impulses, distractions, and moods. You wake up lost in thought, spend the day reacting, and go to bed exhausted from battles that only happened inside your head. But when you develop mental discipline, you become the master of your attention. You decide where it goes, what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You begin to experience life from a centered state, unmoved by the noise, connected to the moment. There will be days when the mind feels loud again, when old patterns resurface, when negative thoughts return. That's okay. Discipline doesn't mean you never fall. It means you never stop getting up. The moment you notice yourself drifting, that's already progress, because awareness is returning. Each time you bring yourself back, you strengthen the muscle of mindfulness. Just like lifting weights, the resistance is what builds strength. It's also important to understand that discipline without compassion becomes punishment. The goal isn't to force silence or suppress thoughts. The goal is gentle persistence, returning again and again to the present moment. There's a softness in true discipline. It's not about winning against the mind. It's about befriending it. The more patient you are with yourself, the deeper your practice becomes. You begin to realize that discipline and kindness are not opposites, they are partners. One gives structure, the other gives grace. A disciplined mind is not a rigid one. It's flexible, adaptable, calm in motion. It knows when to act and when to be still. It doesn't chase after control, it moves with understanding. That kind of discipline comes from years of practice, but every moment is a new opportunity to strengthen it. Every breath, every pause, every choice not to react is a quiet act of mastery. You don't have to do grand things to transform, just consistent, mindful things. If you truly want clarity, you must build rituals that keep your inner space clean. Maybe it's meditation at dawn, or walking without headphones, or journaling your thoughts before bed. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the intention, to create time every day to return to yourself. Over time, that space becomes sacred. It becomes your inner temple. No matter what happens outside, you can always step into it. The greatest peace is not found in avoiding the noise of life, but in learning to remain still within it. That stillness is born from discipline, the discipline to return to yourself when everything tries to pull you away. When that becomes your way of being, negative thinking loses its grip completely. You stop trying to chase clarity because you have become it. Clarity is not found, it is maintained.